One of the most recognizable guitar riffs in the history of rock music was recorded in the middle of the night by a man who was asleep when he played it. Keith Richards had zero memory of ever touching his guitar. The only proof it happened was 40 minutes of snoring on a cassette tape. May 6, 1965. The Rolling Stones are in the middle of their second U.S. tour as headliners. Keith Richards is asleep in a motel room in Clearwater, Florida. He sleeps with a guitar next to him and a cassette recorder on the nightstand. He wakes up at some point in the middle of the night, picks up the guitar, presses record, and plays a 10-note riff in the key of B-flat. Then he mumbles the words, "I cannot get no satisfaction." Then he drops the guitar pick. Then he falls back asleep. The next 40 minutes on the tape are just snoring. Richards described it in his own words years later. "On the tape, you can hear me drop the pick. The rest is me snoring." When Richards played the tape back the next morning, he was genuinely confused. He was not even sure the riff was original. He thought he might have accidentally played the opening of Dancing in the Street by Martha and the Vandellas in his sleep. He brought it to the band anyway, describing it as probably just a good filler track for the next album. Mick Jagger heard it and immediately started writing lyrics. Keith Richards thought the riff was too basic, too simple, too obvious. He later admitted that if he had his way, Satisfaction would never have been released. For days after Richards recorded himself snoring, the Stones walked into Chess Studios in Chicago, one of the most legendary recording studios in America, home to Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, and Muddy Waters, the exact artists that had inspired the Stones to pick up guitars in the first place. They cut a first version of the song. Then 2 days after that, they moved to RCA Studios in Hollywood and recorded again. This time Richards plugged in a brand new piece of equipment he had just bought, a Gibson Maestro fuzztone pedal. The fuzz guitar sound that came out was never supposed to be on the final record. Richards told the band clearly that the fuzz guitar was only a placeholder sketch to show where the horn section would go. He was hearing the song as a horn-driven Motown track. The rest of the band said no. They loved the fuzz. It was staying. That fuzz guitar line became the first high-profile use of a distortion pedal on a #1 pop song in the history of recorded music. One piece of equipment, bought almost by accident, changed the sonic direction of rock and roll permanently. Every overdriven guitar tone in every rock song that followed owes something to that specific recording. Then the song was released without Keith Richards even knowing it was happening. The Stones' manager Andrew Loog Oldham released the unfinished recording as a single on June 4, 1965, without getting the band's permission. Richards found out when he heard it on the radio. He was horrified. He described the fuzz guitar as a gimmick and was convinced audiences would reject it. Satisfaction entered the Billboard Hot 100 on June 12, 1965, and spent 14 weeks on the chart. It knocked Sonny and Cher off the #1 spot. It became the Rolling Stones' first ever #1 in the United States. Rolling Stone magazine later ranked it the #2 greatest song of all time, behind only Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. As for the lyrics, Mick Jagger wrote them while traveling through the United States and watching American consumer culture up close. Television commercials interrupting everything. Advertisements promising satisfaction at every turn. The constant noise of a society selling things to people who did not need them. Jagger described himself as the wrong kind of guy in the wrong place at every turn. The lyrics are not about a relationship. They are about a country. And Jagger wrote them as an outsider looking in, a young British man watching America sell itself to itself on every billboard and radio station he passed. A riff played in a dream. A fuzz pedal bought by accident. A release nobody authorized. And a song Keith Richards was convinced should never come out. #1 in America. #2 of all time. And 40 minutes of snoring that changed rock and roll forever.